fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Warren, Mr. Joe Goldberg, back in the house.
I'm in the house because you asked me to come inside, so here I am.
Yeah, well, you complain. It's cold always for you outside. So
it's a gorgeous suburban Chicago day today. So
that means it'll be snowing tomorrow. So
actually, it's supposed to be like 80 tomorrow, and I think it's 40 on Monday, something like that.
It's crazy, eh? Nothing
it's
like
that stupid Canadian weather coming down.
Yeah, it's Canadian. We need to throw a tax on that too. Put tariff on the weather, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Every day is a bad weather, we'll charge you 25%.
That's why we need a nice warm book to read, like Carmen's books.
Yeah. We've got quite the writer here, and she's been in the same business as you.
Back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day. Her newest book, I believe, is called Barracuda Bay, and it's a detective Emilia Cruz novel, and it's part of her Emilia Cruz series. I think it's book 9 of 9. So, Carmen Amato, thank you for being here.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for having me. I'm coming to you from Tennessee, right outside Nashville.
Oh, my son is there. He's getting married there in November.
Well, it's a great area to be in. Not the least because we have about 80 degrees of temperature outside right now, but we are expecting some big winds and rainstorms later. And of course, if you are a weather geek, you'll know that a couple years ago we had a big tornado in this area a few years ago. So March is always kind of a perilous month, weather-wise, around here.
I'm going to hit a tornado story before we get into this book thing. My son lived in Nashville in a duplex. The tornado took out everything across the street. It was basically Martian landscape outside his door. He didn't even know it. He slept through the whole thing. He's an idiot. Opened the door. And on the other side of the cul-de-sac, there's the tornado debris, and then his side was fine. Take that.
My daughter was in East Nashville at the time.
Yep.
And even though her building had a basement, she stayed in her apartment. This was a pre-war brick battleship of an apartment complex, so she was very safe. But the same situation obtained. She walked out the next morning, and everything across the street was gone.
I bet they were close to each other.
We're lucky. We had somebody's shed end up in our front yard, but other than that, we were fine.
Charge them.
Yeah, extra rent.
Yeah, we can talk books now. Yeah,
rental. Yeah, get a rental on that. Wow. So how did you get into the writing world? Like, what brought you into doing books, and what gave you that kind of confidence to think you could write and have people buy them?
As I mentioned before, I started at the agency, 30 years with the CIA. I retired, 7 years ago. And that is a great incubator for writing skills, because throughout your agency career, whether or not you started in a career path, say analysis where I started, where you are writing every day, you are writing on demand. There is no such thing as I'm waiting for the muse to inspire me, or I'm waiting for characters to tell me what to do. You are writing, and you are writing fast, and you are writing factual every day. So that was a great, shall we say, internship for learning to write well. I came in, I already had a master's. I had done a long, extremely dull, but full of facts, master's thesis. So I knew in my head, I thought I knew how to write, but writing at the agency really honed those skills. Taking my career from analysis into technical collection, technical tools development types of work, I still had to be writing reports. I still had to be writing justifications. I'm testing software. I'm testing new applications. I'm arguing for new applications to become part of work processes. So that writing skill kept growing. What really got me into writing fiction was a significant amount of time spent in Mexico. What I found there was different from what I expected in terms of seeing the social structure of the country. There really, think of that pyramid. You have a very, very small number of people at the top with the money. And as you go down and the pyramid broadens, your population really decreases in economic and political power to an extent that I did not expect, and certainly is far different from the U.S. The social ladder in Mexico, shall we say, it has very, very limited upward mobility. I wanted to write something about what I saw there, about that social structure. But then again, I'm not an anthropologist. I'm not an academic. I did not think that anybody would be interested in what I had to say if I wrote it as nonfiction. So I decided to write it as a thriller. And it took me, we won't say how long, but a long time before I was, because I was learning how to write a major fiction thriller at the same time. I wrote 800 pages, and my agent at the time said, you should break it into 2. And I thought, oh, you're not understanding the message I'm trying to get. In the end, I slimmed it down to like 360 pages or something like that. And it got published 12 years ago as The Hidden Light of Mexico City. So to make a long story short, that's how I jumped into fiction.
Hey, Carmen, you come out of espionage like I did, and I wrote espionage books. Where's the espionage in your books?
I
mean, it seems like a natural jump. That's what we do.
I
we
know.
did it and we wrote it.
It is the natural jump, but it's also, and no hard feelings or intention to be rude, but it is the cliche.
Yep.
I didn't necessarily think there was, the message I wanted to get across in that first book. There is some espionage type content in there. The main character is an attorney working for the Secretary of Public Security, and he discovers collusion between that government minister and an El Chapo-like figure. And the El Chapo, the minister, is basically buying the Mexican presidency for his lover, who is the wife of the current president. At the same time, it's a Cinderella story because the female protagonist is a maid. There is some, subterfuge. There's certainly a lot of deception in that story. But I'd say when it comes to the lessons that I have learned about intelligence in espionage, in, the Hall of Mirrors type of lifestyle, that has translated better into my Detective Emilia Cruz series, in which she's the first female police detective in Acapulco. And so she is confronting the official corruption. She's confronting the drug cartels. She is confronting, the machismo. And a lot of that comes from the time I spent in Mexico and Central America dealing with those kind of issues.
Well, then, the old cliche is, write what you know. You wrote detectives. How did you learn about detective stuff?
I know quite a bit about the Mexican law enforcement scene, which is very different from the American. The series, she's a Mexican citizen. She's a cop in Acapulco. She is in their law enforcement sphere. She's not, dealing with being a detective in the United States and with our law enforcement rules and regulations. She's operating with their situation. So it was my job to know a lot about Mexico, a lot about Central America. And so that was an easy translation.
So your main detective there, Emilia Cruz, who is she to you? Like, and do you see her? Do you have a picture in your mind of who that person would look like? And do you hear the voice? Like, how does that work for you?
A lot of people have asked, am I the role model or the model for Emilia? And only in part. She's an amalgam of three people. One is a woman I met who was an official in the Mexican intelligence structure. She was often the only woman in the room with, in her office area. And when I started at the agency, I was often the only woman in the room as well. I used her a bit as a role model. I think Emilia is much more outspoken, less of a filter to how she interacts with her male colleagues. The other person was a woman who was our housekeeper in Mexico. Definitely someone who probably should be running, I don't know, Google or Meta or, Leidos. But because of the social structure, she was our housekeeper. And it really, this brilliant woman who taught me so much, that was such a shame to me that this was the pinnacle of her career when she was obviously so smart. And the third person is myself. There are definitely aspects of me in Emilia. She's a lot younger and she goes through life with her fists up. She's a kickboxer. I'm more into yoga, but she's definitely a mashup of those three.
So you created her and you had these three people and you wrote a series. Did you know what she is when you started, what she was going to become over the series of your books?
Yes, I'm a planner. I am not a pantser. I wrote a short story that became the first chapter of the first book, which is called Cliff Diver. And I wrote the short story, and at that time we were living in Virginia, and I took it to a writer's critique group and didn't really know what their reaction would be. But I had already published my first novel, and I still hadn't finished saying about Mexico what I wanted to say. And the short story got a lot of love from the critique group. And I thought, okay, this has legs. This is something that can be a vehicle for the message I want to get out. I think it could make some really good mystery reading. So I took that short story and kind of planned out where I would go with this series. And now we are 9 books in. So definitely planned it to be a series once I knew that character was getting a good review.
Do you keep a series Bible or some sort of a way of keeping track of what happens over the 9-book series so that you don't miss something or get someone's eye color wrong or something like that?
It is those little details and those descriptions that are the hardest to recall. I do have a sort of a series Bible. I'm not terribly scrupulous. It's more like a series box. I do have a literal box in which I keep odds and ends, pictures that inspire me. There are some of the secondary characters I did little bios for with a picture that I got out of a magazine, so I would always know what that person looks like or what their basic description was. And for the places that reappear in all the books, notably the hotel where she lives. She lives in a luxury hotel with her American boyfriend who manages the hotel. Conversations often take place in the Paso Doble bar that is based on a couple of my favorite hotels. If you mess up that description, someone will call you on it. So I try to be pretty scrupulous about that and keep details and keep descriptions that I've used.
Hey, Carmen, you mentioned a couple times you 800-page book. You didn't know the message you're trying to say. You've used the phrase, things I wanted to say. There's a message here in your books? There's something you're saying besides just entertaining with your characters?
Absolutely. And that is what started me on this path. The U.S.-Mexico relationship, has been fraught for a long time. And it's very easy to see or to slot the various points of view into very simple buckets, all bad, all druggies, etc. There are still good people in Mexico fighting for the soul of the country. It has such a rich cultural gift to share with the world. The food, the architecture, the history, the museums in Mexico. And of course, it's got beautiful beaches and resorts. It's not all crime. I think those things get overlooked in the broader debate. The crime situation is bad. Acapulco is on a basically do not travel list from the State Department. The newspapers are full of missing persons, the cartel violence, etc. But there's a balance there, and that's really what I wanted to talk about, to show the folks fighting for their country. And Emilia, I think, in fact, I said this to Felix Contreras of NPR when I talked to him a few years ago. Emilia represents hope for what Mexico can do and the people who are fighting for it.
Well, in this series, how do you consider this? Is it fairly violent? Is it kind of a cozy all the way to hardcore? Where would you put it?
Oh, definitely in the gritty noir. If you like Ian Rankin, I would say, or the Nordic noir group, Jo Nesbø, Jussi Adler-Olsen, the Department Q books. That's where the Detective Emilia Cruz series lives on the bookshelf with the international mystery and crime fiction. Definitely not cozy.
Right. So are you pretty happy with the way your character, Emilia Cruz, has grown, like from book 1 to book 9? Has she gone where you wanted her to go?
Absolutely. I'm not of the school of my characters take me. I am the author, as I heard someone once say, then I authorize. What I have done with the series is to create a very compelling environment for this character. She really does live in a stew of paranoia and corruption, where she's not sure who she can trust, who in the police department is in cahoots with various cartels, who's willing to turn each other over. There is that pervasive environment that she's in, the suspicion, the corruption, the duplicity, the deception. And how does she navigate this while solving crimes and trying to have a personal life? Each book is a very rich concoction of story. I always have one major plot, the crime, the major crime, a subplot that may be another crime, maybe an aspect of the major crime, and then a personal conflict. So that each book, it's a very immersive, compelling read. Now, as far as where she has gone, in book 5, I introduced a family dynamic that was hinted at. You knew her mother had lost her mind several years ago and is very childlike. The reason for that was the abrupt demise of Emilia's father when Emilia was a toddler. Well, in book 5, even more compelling reason for her mother's breakdown is presented. And that created an arc within the series that the latest Barracuda Bay kind of ties up. At the same time, there's another arc in that started in book 6, and that is an El Chapo-like figure, drug lord, Diego Barrieles Luna, who becomes obsessed with her. He has made his presence known. He is, at the time when she meets him, he's in jail. He escapes, is now kind of a figure in the background. And in the 6th book where she meets him, he leaves her alive while killing members of her team. That obsession with her is now growing, and we're going to see it resurface in books 10 and 11. Stay tuned.
Yeah, wow. So, and this leads to the next question, because you mentioned Luna and the crowd. How do you develop or place your secondary characters and create your bad people versus the good people?
Well, there's a lot of gray characters.
Yeah.
And definitely they are really taken from the news. I have to say, if you've been paying attention to the news related to Mexico, the former Secretary of Public Education, Genaro Garcia Luna, was sentenced to, I think, like almost 40 years in prison and $2 million fine for having been in cahoots with the Sinaloa cartel. So it's not hard to find inspiration for those secondary characters. We do have he was her partner, Lieutenant Silvio, was her partner, and then he becomes her boss. But in the first book, he is the one who said to her, I never wanted to work with a female officer, and I'm going to make your life miserable until you leave. And that's a direct quote from my career, in which I joined an office that never had a woman in it before, and one of my colleagues said that to me, and I responded, tell me something I don't know, which got used in the book. We have the secondary characters who are her colleagues in the squad room, fellow detectives, that are recurring. It's her partner, the head of the police union for the state of Guerrero, and the chief of police, as well as the mayor of Acapulco, who has her own agenda. And in book 9, it is the murder of the mayor's sister that starts the ball rolling. So those characters, they're all a little bit gray. They are recurring. And then, of course, you always, in a book series, you're introducing the new criminals, the new whodunit, folks involved in that plot, etc. A lot of personal and a lot of news out of Mexico is informing all of those characters.
Are you writing Mexico or Acapulco as like a character?
Definitely. A lot of these crimes really are essential to that setting. And I always try and introduce positive aspects of the Mexican culture into the storyline. Whether it's the food they eat, and there's always a recipe at the back of the book, very similar to Donna Leon's Inspector Brunetti series set in Venice. You can't really picture it happening anywhere else, whether it's connected to a holiday in Mexico or just the geography. The Acapulco Bay is such a stunning place, but there's mountains that protect the city, but it also kind of cuts things off. The Maxi Tunnel that goes through the mountains, in the first book, that became a very critical place where smugglers were using the tunnel, using the sort of the work areas that flank the tunnel as staging points. The Santa Muerta, the Mexico's forbidden saint of death, which is connected to drug cartel superstitions. That became the critical story behind Book 5, Pacific Reaper. for book 6, I used the 2014 mass kidnapping of 43 teaching college students, which you may have heard of. That has been still, 10 years on, unsolved crime. That became the focus of the plot for 43 Missing, which was book 6. I do think it's very, very specific. The plots really pull in what's going on in Mexico today.
You said you're a planner, so do you kind of know where you're going to go? How many more books there's going to be? Do you know where it's going to end?
I think I can write an infinite number of books. I did a little break during the pandemic, and I wrote a 4-book historical fiction series based on the stories my grandfather used to tell about the time he was a deputy sheriff of Oneida County, New York during Prohibition. And I really enjoyed that, but I do think that the Detective Emilia Cruz series is my first love, and I will continue indefinitely. At one point I thought, well, when she gets married, I'll end it. But I don't necessarily think so. The readers are egging me on to keep going. I was really pleased after a 3-year hiatus while I put out the historical fiction Galliano Club series to put out Barracuda Bay. And it was really greeted with a lot of enthusiasm from readers, which I had worried that I had kind of left them by the wayside. But they came back and they really embraced the story. So I have at least 3 plots percolating right now, so I know there's going to be at least 3 more. I have no reason to end the series anytime soon.
Well, so listen, and now let's find out. Now, do you have a place where readers can come find you? Social media, website, all that stuff. Where do readers come and find Carmen?
Well, they can find me on Instagram at author Carmen Amato. They can find me on Facebook, author Carmen Amato again, on X as Carmen Connects, and definitely on Substack, which is where my newsletter, Mystery Ahead, is now. So it's mysteryahead.substack.com. When you opt in to join me on Mystery Ahead on Substack, you get a link that takes you to all my free stuff, including the Detective Emilia Cruz Starter Library and the Detective Emilia Cruz Cookbook.
There you go. You get it all. Cook,
Al,
read.
do you have a cookbook? You have a cookbook, Al?
No.
It is just for those who join me on the newsletter, but it is 7 recipes from the books. So, as I said before, Mexican food, who doesn't love it? But it is part of the whole environment of the books, the whole atmosphere of the books, and so I took 7 of the recipes from the books and compiled them into a cookbook.
Well, we look forward to that. Well, we're glad you came on the show. We'll put your website, we'll put everything up, the book, on ours so people can find you easily. And the newest book is called Barracuda Bay, and it's book 9 of 9 in the Detective Emilia Cruz series. So thank you for being here, Carmen Amato.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.